How a single mistranslation created the devil. What if the devil's entire origin story, the grand epic of the most beautiful angel rebelling against God, has almost nothing to do with a war in heaven, and everything to do with a translation choice that's been misunderstood for over 1,600 years? The whole legend of Lucifer, the fallen angel, the prince of darkness, it all hangs on a single word, in a single verse of the Bible, that was completely misinterpreted. We're about to unravel how a poetic insult aimed at a long-dead Babylonian king got twisted into the origin story for the most iconic villain in history, because the story you think you know, it isn't the one that was originally told. Section 1. The myth we all know. Let's start with the story we've all absorbed, the one that's been cemented in our culture for centuries. You know the one. Before there was Satan, there was Lucifer. He was God's most perfect creation, the most brilliant and beautiful of all the angels, a being of pure light. His name, we're told, means light bringer. But that beauty filled him with pride. He looked at his own magnificence and thought, "I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will make myself like the Most High." This incredible arrogance was the first sin, and it kicked off a cataclysmic war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought Lucifer and his followers. In the end, Lucifer was defeated, stripped of his glory, and cast out of heaven, falling like lightning. From that moment on, he was no longer Lucifer, the light bringer, but Satan, the adversary, the eternal enemy of God and humanity. This is the definitive origin story for the devil in much of the Christian tradition. It's powerful, it's dramatic, and it has inspired centuries of art, poetry, and movies. It's the foundation for how much of the Western world understands the concept of evil. But there's a huge problem with this story, a problem that starts with that one name, Lucifer. Section 2. The problem with the name. If Lucifer is the devil's original name, you'd think it would be all over the Bible, right? At least in the parts describing his big fall. But here's the wild part. The name Lucifer appears exactly once in the entire Bible, just one time. And only in certain translations, most famously, the King James Version from 1611. The verse is Isaiah 14:12, which in the KJV reads, "How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning." Now this is where it gets really interesting. If you pick up most modern Bibles, like the NIV, ESV, or NRSV, and turn to that same verse, you won't find the name Lucifer. Instead, you'll read something like, "How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn." This brings up a pretty big question. Why would modern translators just delete the devil's name from the Bible? Is it some kind of conspiracy? Or did they figure out something that the King James translators missed? The truth isn't a cover-up, but a fascinating linguistic detective story that takes us all the way back to the original Hebrew. Section 3. The investigation. Who was Isaiah actually talking to? To solve this, we have to go back to the source. The Old Testament book of Isaiah isn't a fantasy novel about angels and demons. It's a collection of prophecies, poems, and rebukes aimed at Israel and its neighbors, like Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon. The context of Isaiah chapter 14 is incredibly clear. The prophet isn't telling a fable about the dawn of time. He's delivering a prophecy, a taunt, against a real human enemy of his people. The text says so directly a few verses earlier in Isaiah 14:4. "You will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon." The whole chapter is a satirical poem mocking the arrogance and eventual death of a Babylonian king. This king was so full of himself that he acted like a god. Isaiah poetically describes his downfall, imagining other dead kings in Sheol, the Hebrew underworld, laughing at him for ending up just as dead as they are. It's in this context of mockery that we find the famous verse. But in the original Hebrew, the word Lucifer doesn't exist. The phrase is Hillel ben Shachar. Hillel means shining one or bright one. Ben Shakar means son of the dawn, so a more accurate translation is Shining One, Son of the Dawn. This wasn't a name, it was a poetic title for a well-known celestial body, the morning star, the planet we now call Venus. It shines brighter than anything else just before sunrise, seeming to rule the sky. But the moment the sun, the true king of the day, appears, it vanishes. Do you see how brilliant that insult is? Isaiah was calling the arrogant king of Babylon the morning star. He was saying, "You thought you were the brightest thing in the sky, but your glory was temporary. A greater power showed up, and now you've completely disappeared." It was a killer metaphor for a human king's pride and his inevitable fall, not a historical account of a fallen angel. Section 4. The mistranslation that changed the world. So how in the world did we get from Hillel ben Shachar, a clever jab at a Babylonian king, to Lucifer, the prince of darkness? The answer is a long game of historical telephone where a single word's meaning was lost and a new myth was created. First, the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek around the 3rd to 1st centuries BCE. In this version, called the Septuagint, Hillel was translated as Hosphorus, which is simply the Greek word for morning star. So far, so good. The meaning is still there. The real turning point came in the late 4th century AD, when a scholar named Jerome was asked to create a definitive Latin translation of the Bible, which became known as the Vulgate. When Jerome got to Isaiah 14:12, he had to translate the Greek word Hosphorus. The common Latin word for the morning star was Lucifer. Let's be crystal clear about this. In 4th century Rome, the word Lucifer had zero negative or demonic meaning. It literally means light bringer, from the Latin words lux, light, and ferre, to bring. It was just the name for the planet Venus. Jerome wasn't naming a devil, he was using the correct astronomical term in his language. In fact, the word Lucifer is used elsewhere in Jerome's Latin Vulgate to refer to positive things, like the light of dawn in the book of Job. Even more surprisingly, early Christians sometimes used Lucifer as an honorary title for Jesus Christ. Church hymns referred to Jesus as the true Lucifer who brings God's light to a dark world, and the Apostle Peter even refers to Jesus as the morning star, or phosphorus in Greek, which is Lucifer in Latin. So to recap, a Hebrew metaphor for a king's pride became a Greek astronomical term, which then became a Latin astronomical term that was also used to describe Jesus. How did this word end up as the exclusive property of the devil? Section 5. How a mistake became a myth. A translation choice doesn't become a world-changing myth overnight. It needs help. The seeds of the Lucifer myth were planted by early Christian theologians like Origen, long before the famous epics were written. They started reading passages like Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, another taunt aimed at a human king, not as history or poetry, but as allegories. They connected the fall from heaven of the morning star in Isaiah with a line from Jesus in the New Testament. "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." They began weaving these separate verses together, creating a brand new story. They argued that Isaiah wasn't just talking about a Babylonian king. He was also allegorically describing Satan's original fall from grace. This idea got a huge boost from popular non-biblical Jewish texts of the time, like the Book of Enoch, which were filled with vivid stories of angelic rebellions. These popular legends were already widespread and began to merge with the new interpretation of Isaiah's Lucifer. The name and the story became inseparable. But the real tipping point, the moment this idea became an unforgettable cultural epic, was literature. First, Dante Alighieri's Inferno in the 14th century depicted a monstrous, three-faced Lucifer frozen in ice at the center of hell. But it was John Milton's 17th century masterpiece, Paradise Lost, that truly sealed the deal. Milton took the basic idea of a fallen angel and gave him a soul, transforming Lucifer into a complex, charismatic, and tragic anti-hero. He gave him epic speeches, powerful motivations, and a dramatic backstory that has captivated readers for centuries. The Lucifer we picture today, the handsome, rebellious angel who famously says it is better to reign in hell than serve in heaven, is not from the Bible. He is, in almost every detail, the Lucifer of John Milton. Our modern image of the devil owes more to a 17th century English poet than to the original Hebrew scriptures. So when you put it all together, the grand origin story of the devil is the product of a remarkable chain of events. A poetic insult for a long-dead king, a Hebrew phrase for the planet Venus, a routine Latin translation, an allegorical interpretation by theologians, and finally, the epic imagination of a poet. The name Lucifer was never a name to begin with, and it certainly wasn't Satan's. It was a title for a planet, a metaphor for pride, and a word that could even be used to describe Christ. The correction of this word in modern Bibles isn't a conspiracy, it's an act of getting back to the original text, of choosing linguistic accuracy over centuries of tradition. The story of Lucifer is a powerful reminder of how ideas evolve, and how a single word, reinterpreted over and over, can create a myth so powerful it shapes the worldview of millions for millennia. If you enjoy digging into history to challenge traditional stories and uncover the truth behind the myths, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell. We're always exploring the fascinating origins of the stories you thought you knew. And let me know in the comments. Did you already know the story behind the name Lucifer? What other historical mistranslations should we investigate next? Thanks for watching.